A week today, Tuesday, June 4th, you have the rare opportunity to hear a Georgian choir live in Winnipeg, presented by the Winnipeg Singers. 6 members of the Didgori folk ensemble perform at Crescent Fort Rouge United Church as part of their Canadian tour. If you've never heard Georgian folk singing, go. It is a truly unique, rich, and fascinating style. You are just a little sampling of it there. To learn a little bit more about Georgian folk music, I've welcomed Matthew Knight into the Classic 107 studio this morning. Hi, Matthew.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, very good morning to you. So just before we get chatting about Georgian folk music, sure. I was wondering if we could start with a pretty basic question. You're an ethnomusicologist. You just completed your PhD at the University of Illinois. What does an ethnomusicologist study?
Well, so it began basically as a study of anything that wasn't kind of covered by classical music history, musicology. So things that fell outside of that kind of Western canon. And it tended to be musics of Africa, musics of Asia, Australia, places that wouldn't be studied otherwise. And today it's really become more of an anthropological look at the use of music in society. So someone could, do an ethnomusicological study of a symphony orchestra and look at sort of the relations between the players and the conductor and the kind of audience that backs that and that kind of thing. It really can go in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating aspect of music just because of the broader ramifications, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess my burning question is, you're from Manitoba.
Yeah.
We're not exactly known for our Georgian folk music scene.
Sure.
How did you get started on Georgian folk music?
I mean, it was really just a random encounter with these sounds that were completely unlike anything I'd ever heard before. And as someone who loved singing and loved singing in harmony and kind of that close harmony and hearing the crunch of, doing barbershop or gospel or whatever else kind of vocal jazz kind of thing, right? Getting these weird harmonies that are a little bit unusual and resolve in different directions. When I first heard Georgian music, it was just such a mind-blowing experience and something that really fascinated me right from the start. So, I was choosing topics for my PhD, and just Georgian music was incredibly exciting because of that rich depth and amazing sonic power of the music.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you said it there. We as singers, we like to indulge in the crunch sometimes, but they take it to a whole new level. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the style of singing in Georgian folk music?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple things jump out at you right away when you hear it. It's usually sung with sort of a very open, but sort of chesty sound. So it's very rich and deep that way. It's a folk style of singing, not classical or bel canto, but just that rich power, and then combined with these harmonies that really follow a completely different system from what you're used to from common practice harmony and the kind of music that's been passed down to us through the classical European tradition. So yeah, things just don't resolve in the way you'd expect them to. There's some use of quarter tones and things like that, so the intonation can sound a little bit wonky or wrong at first if you're not expecting it. But it really is a completely different system that takes a lot of time to start understanding, but can be enjoyed right away as something new and interesting.
Well, speaking of something new and interesting and thrilling, I have to say one of the most moving musical experiences of my life came while the University of Manitoba Singers were on tour. We were in Vasa, Finland.
Yes.
And when we were there, we heard 4 Georgian chanters, the chanters of, I think, like Panteleimon or something like that. And I still think about this concert to this day. People were weeping around me. Yeah. I just didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. It really blew my mind. And it wasn't just the melodies and the harmonies, but it was also the sheer power of the singing.
It's really, it has to be experienced. And that's why it's so exciting that we have a live ensemble coming, that people can actually go and hear it in that space, not just on a recording.
Because the recording really doesn't do it justice. I just remember these 2 gentlemen almost hugging each other to provide the drone. So I guess when one would breathe, the other would sing. And it was just this, it was surround sound coming from these 4 gentlemen standing at the front. I can only imagine what 6 singers or the full Didgori folk ensemble would do. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the Didgori ensemble itself?
Yeah, sure. So, there are lots of these kind of organic singing groups in Georgia today that, don't get a salary or anything, don't get funded specifically for their music. But of that crop, Didgori is probably right at the top. They've been singing together for more than 12 years. Not sure exactly the
15th
number.
anniversary year, I think I read on the tour.
2003, 2004, something like that. And yeah, really they've built a name for themselves as some of the finest interpreters of songs that were recorded 100 years ago, and then they've listened to those recordings, field archived things like that, and reconstituted them. In 2016, they were recognized by the Georgian Ministry of Culture as the finest young folk ensemble in the country. So young here meaning people who are under 40, I guess. And that really just speaks to the respect that they have in Georgia, because, they're really interested in sort of this authentic performing style that is based on, what did villagers sound like and what were they doing with it, right? What was this music like for people in everyday life? And even though they perform at a very high professional level, they want to maintain sort of that connection to the roots, and just gives it a little bit of spark of energy that some of the more formal groups don't always manage to bring to the table in the same way.
Yeah, I wonder if we can talk just a little bit more about that aspect of it. I mean, like, especially as an ethnomusicologist, the development of this music, I mean, you talked about how unique it is, the use of quarter tones. Does part of that, I imagine, has to do with where Georgia is located, between like the Black and Caspian Seas, where east meets west, north meets south. It's just sort of a confluence of places.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how they keep this tradition alive, a very old tradition, right?
Yeah. I mean, geographically, it's quite unique, because as soon as you go beyond Georgia's borders into Turkey or into Armenia or Azerbaijan, they don't have these traditions of singing in harmony at all. The most you might have is some kind of drone and melody things going on with, sort of flute-like instruments in Armenia. But it's really quite a unique system. If you go into the North Caucasus, north of Georgia, in the southern part of Russia, there are some harmony singing traditions there too, and the Cossacks, of course, also did. But it's really kind of a strange thing that this developed here, and that it's been maintained for so long, because, like I said, the music of surrounding areas is quite different. And, really, because this is an oral tradition, there's not a lot of documentation specifically stating that, in year 400 or whatever, they developed this style of singing, right? We don't exactly know. But there's some theories that say this could be, 4,000 years old, some of the repertoire, and just, it's got this immense history behind it.
Yeah, that blows my mind. We're talking about 400 years in classical music, and we're like, 400 years of music, but almost 4,000 in a folk music tradition. Yeah. You almost can't wrap your head around it, really. I guess the last thing I want to ask you, just to kind of bring things full circle, going back to how you started singing, involved in the Manitoba choral scene since the early 2000s. One of the things that I noticed in your bio is that you're involved in shape note singing. Yeah. And for me, yesterday, I was driving around in my car, windows down, Georgian chant blaring. If anyone was wondering who that was, it was definitely me.
Or me, maybe.
Or you. Okay, great. There was two of us. But I couldn't help but think while driving, that raw, unabashed sound, almost drawing parallels with the Southern singing tradition. Do you find any parallels there, or?
Yeah, totally. I know a lot of people who are actually interested in both styles of music. So actually, when I was in Georgia the first time, I met some Americans who had come over, and they loved singing shape note music, and they also loved this Georgian polyphony. So there's a lot of people who sing music from the both Georgias, right? And there's always kind of a point of confusion that we're not talking about the state Georgia, but a lot of people who like music from the state of Georgia like this music from the country of Georgia as well. And it has to do with those open harmonies and the very grounded, loud singing style. It's almost like, the punk rock of folk music in some ways.
The punk rock of folk music. Yeah. That is a great way to put it. Well, Matthew, I want to thank you so much for coming by the Classic 107 studio this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Matthew Knight recently completed his PhD in ethnomusicology at the University of Illinois. We've been chatting about Georgian folk music because Didgori is coming to town, the Georgian folk ensemble, presented by the Winnipeg Singers, Tuesday, June 4th at Crescent Fort Rouge United Church. We're going to hear one more selection from the Didgori disc, Singing is Lifestyle. Would you mind setting this up a little bit? We're going to hear a little bit of Georgian yodeling, aren't we?
Yeah. So this is one of the things that's really kind of most treasured in Georgia, this unique style of yodeling, and it's really like nothing you've ever heard anywhere else. So Georgia has a lot of regional singing traditions, and this is from the west part of the country. And I have to sort of preface this by saying that some people find the yodeling a little bit offensive. So if you get any, negative phone calls, my apologies. But it's not only going to be this that you're going to be hearing at the concert. So if you like it, you'll definitely hear some of it, but it's not going to be the only thing on the plate.
All right, here it is, Georgian yodeling on Winnipeg's Classic 107.